What is going on, New York Giant fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, comment, do all the good stuff, share out, turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops or a video drops. And also 5 stars on Apple Podcasts for us. We appreciate you guys. And also share this out, as I mentioned before, because we are a few subscribers away from 1,600. We've been a little slow to get there lately. I take blame for it, of course, because I haven't put up as much video content other than podcast episodes and live streams. So we want to get it up there, folks. Share it out, do all the good stuff. So, the New York Giants are back home this week against the divisional rival in the Washington Commanders. And, of course, later on, we'll do the usual interview with the opposing side, which is Corey Sanchez of the Warpath, who we had on last year. But there's two things that go into this. And number one, this is the second divisional game that the Giants will be playing at home this year. And this is third game they're playing at home, period. And they could be in favor, depending on how you look at it. I mean, obviously, Washington beat Atlanta last week with Desmond Ridder at quarterback, and their defense had a couple of good turnovers. The Giants' defense played well against the Bills, but they didn't win the game. As we're looking right now, Washington is a 3-point favorite in the spreads. But it's just going to be interesting to see what goes on in this game. Now, of course, the Commanders are farther in the playoff race than the Giants are because they are 3-3. The Giants are 1-5. But do the Giants embrace this full trade mode if they lose this game? Because this is a winnable game. I didn't think Buffalo was. I didn't think Miami was. This is a winnable game. And to be fair, we said that about the Seahawks. Didn't quite happen. So if you're the Giants, you're back home this week. Maybe Darren Waller's feeling a little good because his wife won with the Aces for the WNBA championship. Maybe this team is feeling better about themselves off of last week. And, of course, it's about scoring points and capitalizing on opportunities. And the Giants have yet to score a first-half touchdown. They haven't scored an offensive touchdown in 12 to 13 quarters. It's not good. That's, 3 football games, basically? Exactly. So, there are some new injuries on the injury report. Obviously, there's always the Daniel Jones toss around. But let's go to Washington first because it's not much of anything. Kendall Fuller, DNP pretty much most of the week. He's supposed to go. That's what he said in practice, that he expects to go. He was battling a knee injury during the week. And everyone else was either limited or full practice. So it seems like the Washington Commanders are pretty healthy. And that's a good thing for them because over the years they haven't been a healthy unit in some cases. And, obviously that's good for them. But coming up against a very banged-up Giants team, we'll start with Daniel Jones. Let me tell you something, folks. In my opinion, and I know Brian Dable loves the gamesmanship and this, that, and the third, I got to be honest with you. I don't think Daniel Jones is playing this week. Could he play next week against the Jets? We'll talk about that when we get to it. But I don't think he's playing this week. He's still said on Tuesday with Kay Adams that he has pain in the left side of his neck. It would be very irresponsible for the Giants to put him out there. And you know what? If you don't believe in your backup, you're kind of throwing in that towel, the white flag. You're throwing in that already because you signed Tyrod Taylor last year to, at least if Daniel Jones gets injured, manage the game. And aside from a few mistakes, I thought he did pretty well against the Buffalo Bills, speaking with so many surroundings that went haywire, offensive line and all these other different things. So, Adoree Jackson, questionable with a neck injury. He finished last week's game, so I don't see why he would be a guy that's going to be out, to be honest. But, hey, listen, we'll see about that. You move forward up in the pecking order. You got Andrew Thomas, who's out, John Michael Schmitz, and Matt Parrott. I'm surprised Matt Parrott hasn't been IR'd. They did IR Josh Azudu, who is out for the season with a toe injury. Shane Lemieux out for the season with a biceps injury. So, again, those offensive line injuries, and people saying, oh, it's starting guard Chandler Mew. Like Adam Schefter said that it's not true. But those are still injuries, and the Giants have to bring new blood in. So there's that. And then one of the bigger ones, which is not a good sign, to be honest with you, Evan Neal did not practice on Wednesday, Thursday limited play, and then did not practice on Friday. So I'm going to be honest with you, folks. We're looking at another O-line combination. I think we're at 7, 8 combos, something like that. And it's a good thing the Giants didn't experience week 1 with the rotations because, God forbid, maybe someone else got hurt earlier in the year. But as far as Evan Neal goes, Tyree Phillips was brought back in, which is something they never really should have done in terms of releasing him. But it's interesting because he was talking about how he, learned at Stout University or Stoutland University. Of course, he's referring to the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland, who is probably, I would say, the second best O-line coach in the league next to Bill Callahan. And, everyone's praising, yeah, he's back, he's great and all this. Like, I'm not saying I'm ripping Tyree Phillips. That's not what I'm doing. But everyone's talking about him coming back and whatnot. What's a big sign here is that if he got better when he sucked in camp and he got better again with the Eagles and Jeff Stoutland, who does that really put the blame on? That puts the blame on Bobby Johnson, like we've been saying these past few weeks. Puts the blame on him because if he couldn't coach up Tyree Phillips and, he couldn't do what he was supposed to do or whatever the case may be, and I get Phillips is his own player. He's not a fucking robot. But, I don't know, man. I don't know. That just kind of goes to the things we've been saying about Bobby Johnson and some of these other cats in the room. So I think there's going to be a possibility that either Pugh or Tyree Phillips plays left tackle. I think Pugh may play left guard. It could be Mark Lewinsky. Bredesen's the center either way. McKeithen at right. And the right tackle could be Pugh if they have Tyree Phillips at left tackle. Or they could switch around. That's going to be pretty interesting to see. But to be honest with you folks, I think now Azu's out for the year. What you could experiment with is maybe somebody's unhealthy in a certain scenario or whatnot. But let's just say Andrew Thomas comes back before John Michael Schmitz and Evan Neal comes back before John Michael Schmitz. I would put Tyree Phillips at right guard or left guard, leave Justin Pugh and Ben Bredesen in there, and then also shuffle it up when JMS comes back. Because I don't think McKeithen's a starter in this league. Now, you could argue, yeah, he's a draft pick, this, that, and the other thing, and, Daniel Jones and this, that, whatever, the season's over. Right, but you still want to put a competent O-line out there for your running game to survive and for your quarterback to survive. That's that. So we go into the 2023 team stats for both teams. Total yards per game, Commanders, let's start with them. They're 22nd, 16th again in the passing game, 25th in running game, and 3rd in points. Just a reminder, folks, Eric Bieniemy is their offensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator is a guy we've known for years, Jack Del Rio, 29th in total yards per game, 27th against the pass, 25th against the run, 29th in points per game. Their defense hasn't been great. Up front, it's pretty solid. I think they're something like top 5, top 7 in sacks, but that back end has not been clearing it up, and we'll get more information from Mr. Corey Sanchez when we do the interview portion of the show. But they are 3rd in pass percentage, so that tells you everything they need. You need to know about them is that they're a pass-heavy offense. Sam Howell has gotten a lot of passing attempts, 30th in run percentage, 15th in pass percentage on first down, 26th in run percentage on first down, 13th in blitz percentage, 13th in pressure percentage, and 7th in sacks. So, they don't blitz a lot, but when they do, they get home, and even then they get home with their front four, which is pretty solid. Giants offensively, every category, actually the first 2 categories, total yards and passing offense, they're 31st. 21st in rushing, and 32nd in points per game. Now you look at the defense, 27th in total yards, 16th against the pass, 21st against the run, 28th in points, and then you take a look at the analytics side of things, 10th in pass percentage, 23rd in run percentage, 25th in pass percentage on first down, 18th in run percentage on first down, 4th in blitz percentage, 24th in pressure percentage, 32nd in sacks. So let's move to things to look for. Obviously a massive pass game from Washington, but that also leaves something in the wind. What does that leave in the wind, you ask? Their offensive line has given up more sacks than the New York Giants have. Guaranteed it's only one. But their offensive line hasn't played up to expectations. Nick Gates has already allowed 4 sacks this season. And if it was a tackle, it'd be a little bit more acceptable. But Nick Gates is the starting center. It's not really that good. And he's second in the NFL in sacks given up. Andrew Wiley, 4 sacks given up this season. Let's look at Mr. Charles Leno. He did not start last game, so I have to bear that in mind. He's given up 1 sack, so he hasn't been bad, at least according to most of the analytics. You move to Sam Cosmi. He's given up only 1 sack, and then also as well we go to one more guy, which is Sadiq Charles, and he's given up 2 sacks. So maybe there's a combo in there. Again, we'll find out more from Corey. I know there was one game, particularly at the beginning of the year. I want to say it was against the Rams. It was against somebody, and they were giving up sacks like crazy. I think it was against Arizona, believe it or not. Yeah, I believe it was week 1 against Arizona. They gave up 6 sacks. And to be fair, some of those were on Sam Howell. And I would like to think that he's adjusted his pocket presence since then. But if he hasn't, and even if he has, I would still throw more blitzes from Wink Martindale. Remember, last year, the Giants' defense was made up of Nick McLeod, Fabian Moreau, and Darnay Holmes. I know Adoree has not been good, but you have him, Cordell Flott, who's a solid slot, and Deonte Banks. That's an upgrade over last year. I think, and we're going to go to top matchups when we do, but I think that's an upgrade over what we saw last year, and also Zion Gilbert was playing the slot, and he gave up a touchdown to Jahan Dotson, who we'll be talking about in a little bit. But I think the Giants can run with this offense. I can. I do think that. I think they can. Because, I mean, they played really... Not that they're going to have this repeat 14 points only performance like they did against the Bills, but, I mean, when pretty much the Washington Commanders are a one-dimensional offense, I don't know. I'd like to think that the Giants can, make some things happen. I think they need to get more sacks. I know pressure's this great thing that a lot of people rely on, and pressure breaks pipes. The Giants are last in the NFL in sacks with 5. 4 of them Kayvon Thibodeau has, I should say. Kayvon Thibodeau has 4 of them. And Leonard Williams and DJ Davidson split 1. 5 sacks in 6 games ain't going to cut it. So if you're Kayvon Thibodeau, you turn on the Jets this game. I want to see a sack from Dexter Lawrence, and I get it. He's been double-teamed. Didn't really show up against Miami, but against Buffalo, he's pretty evident there. Also, Leonard Williams, I mean, I'd like to see him a little bit more, $32 million worth of a cap hit. You probably want to see more out of him. And you know what's funny to me? Is that the Giants have not signed an edge rusher. Either from the practice squad or from someone else's practice squad or another roster or something along those lines, because you look at the edge room, it's 3 guys. It's Basham, Thibodeau, and Ward. Ojulari is on IR. Yeah, we're all shocked by that one. So my question is this. Do they believe in Boogie Basham as a pass rusher more? Do they believe in Jihad Ward as a pass rusher? I don't think so. Hopefully not. Do they give that role to Isaiah Simmons? Do they give that role to Carter Coughlin, who did see some defensive snaps? I believe it was against Miami, or maybe it was against Buffalo. But he got some snaps in. So just be aware of that. And he was a pass rusher in college. So, I mean, at this point, you're splitting hairs if you're comparing these pass rushers. But you need somebody on the other side, and maybe the Giants can get there. Washington's front is good. The secondary is bad. Their defensive front is good, and we'll go more exclusively into players to watch. But their secondary is not good. They've struggled. Statistically, Benjamin St-Juste, the former Minnesota product. He's been their best corner. Fuller has had his fair share of struggles. Emmanuel Forbes, he got benched. And also, you have to factor in some of their other corners, Christian Holmes being one of them, Danny Johnson, who's mostly a return man but can play some corner in a pinch. So the Giants could either do quick pass, kind of like what a lot of people have been seeing. They could also go to the next one, ground and pound, control the clock. I honestly think that might be their best asset this game, is the running game, the ability to control the clock. And the problem with that is, the negative with that is, and they did that the last game pretty much, put Saquon on the ground and all these different things. And, they held Buffalo's defense to a good amount of points. That's 14. But you have less opportunities because let's just say the Giants go down the field for 7 minutes, right? They either score 3, 7, or nothing, or maybe even 8. But let's just say they score 3. Washington comes back with a long drive and a touchdown. Or maybe the Giants score 7, and then Washington scores 7. And then the Giants score nothing, and Washington puts up 7. So it's 14-7, and you're limited with time in the second quarter. And maybe perhaps at the end of the game if it turns into a situation like that. So the Giants have to be efficient on offense if they're going to go with the strategy of ground and pound. They have to put up more than 10 points. Let's put up a touchdown in this game. Let's put it in the end zone. Let's execute on those opportunities. Can we get Darren Waller's first touchdown? Can Saquon punch it in for the first time since he's been injured? So those are some things to look for. Players to watch. We'll start with Sam Howell. He's a little bit, at least from the outside perception, which includes me, on the turnover-prone side. I do think he is prone to the turnover a little bit. He's got 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He threw 4 picks. I believe it was against the Chicago Bears, or it was against like one of those other teams that they were playing. I'm going to take a look, but I'm pretty sure he had a good game against the Eagles. Yeah, we got it right here. It was actually against Buffalo he threw 4 picks, so my bad on that one. Against Chicago, he had 1 interception, but he threw 4 picks against the Buffalo defense. And the Buffalo defense has been here and there and around the square. But Howell, I think this is a game the Giants have to get turnovers. And I have to give credit to the defense. They have been over the last few weeks. They had, 3 turnovers in the Miami game and 2 turnovers in the Bills game? That's 5, matches their game total. Guess what? Get 2 more. Maybe a fumble comes their way. Maybe another interception. Keep grabbing that ball. Bobby Okereke has definitely had a hand on every turnover except for one this season. Have to give it to Okereke. You look at the rushing game, and not much feature for Antonio Gibson, which means most of the rushing game that they do have is featured through Brian Robinson, who obviously we know the story about. 77 carries, 302 yards, 3.9 yards per pop, and 3 touchdowns, and 1 fumble this season. It wasn't lost, though, and he's also got 22 first downs. I do think the 3.9 can be a little misleading. I know, obviously, efficiency-wise, they're probably not great in the category of the running game, but I do think he could plow some big runs. And if the Giants get vulnerable on defense, they start missing tackles, that's where he's going to hit you hardest. He likes to break tackles a lot. He's not elusive, but he's a guy that's going to truck the shit out of you. You go to the receiving game, Terry McLaurin, 1 touchdown on the season, 342 yards on 31 catches. He's the number 1. Curtis Samuel, 27 catches, 285 yards, 2 touchdowns. Logan Thomas, 19 catches, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Jahan Dotson, 1 touchdown, 17 catches, 140 yards. Personally, it's just my opinion, I was expecting a little bit more out of Jahan Dotson. I believe they drafted him in the first round out of Penn State last year. And he did well against the Giants. He did. You look at the stats. He had a big downfield reception against Nick McLeod, or was it Jason Pinnock, in the second game. And he had a big touchdown the first game, which I believe tied the game up at that point. Zion Gilbert missing a tackle, and that was pretty much that. I was there to see it. So, you got that. And also, by the way, the last time the Giants had a home game against Washington, they tied, and I was there. So, I don't want that again. I really don't. But I might expect to see a little bit more Jahan Dotson this game. I don't know. I feel like he's a sleeper. I like Jahan Dotson. Kind of wanted him in the draft when he was drafted. But again, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, how they fare against the corners. Now, the O-line, as I mentioned, the sack numbers earlier, they've given up 34 sacks in a total of 6 games, and that's one more than the Giants. I'm not saying they're as bad as the Giants O-line. I think okay, let's try this again. Sack stats. I think sack stats can be skewed because garbage time and whether your quarterback causes a good amount of sacks, and I think Sam Howell did that when he was playing the Arizona Cardinals. So we move forward to the other side of the trenches. That's the defensive line. We'll start out with Montez Sweat, the former Mississippi State product. 4.5 sacks, 16 tackles for a loss, 9 quarterback hits, 20 tackles, and 14 quarterback pressures. You move to the former first-round pick, second overall pick actually, Chase Young, 3 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 3 tackles for a loss, 15 quarterback pressures, and 11 total tackles on the season. And you move to Jonathan Allen, 3 sacks, 9 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 7 quarterback pressures. Jerron Payne got a big payday this offseason. 1 sack, 5 tackles, 6 quarterback hits. Actually, 5 tackles for a loss, 19 tackles, 7 quarterback pressures there too. So you move to the back end of the defense slowly. Jamin Davis, 2 tackles for a loss, total of 37 tackles on the season. He's been solid in coverage, 43.2 passer rating allowed, 60% completion, 68 yards, and also an interception. Now you move to Emmanuel Forbes. Completion percentage hasn't been bad, but the passer rating is high, and so are the yards. 1 interception, 61.5 completion percentage, 344 yards, 1 touchdown, 102.2 passer rating. Kendall Fuller, 6 pass deflections on the season to go with 32 tackles. Completion percentage is up at 67.6. 2 interceptions. He had 1 last week against the Atlanta Falcons. 109.9 passer rating and 5 touchdowns given up. So you'd like that to be lower, especially for Kendall Fuller, who's still a solid corner in this league. Benjamin St-Juste, completion percentage is 60. 1 interception, 66.9 passer rating, 30 tackles, has not allowed a touchdown. And Cam Curl, who's one of their better defensive players, completion percentage high at 75. He's a safety, so you do expect that. 93 passer rating, 1 sack on the season, 55 tackles, and no touchdowns allowed. So you kind of have to give it to him there. So before we go to the rest of the show, we do have the sponsor that is SeatGeek. So if you guys are going to a concert, if you guys are looking for parking passes, if you guys are, I don't know, going to a ball game, going to a Giants game, you're going to a Jets game, you're going to a Bills game, a Commanders game, the code works. Big Blue in the Bronx gets you $20 off on your entire order. So, let's go to top matchups. I'm going to start with Jalen Hyatt versus Washington corners. I want to see how they play him now, of course. Over the last few weeks, it's been quick game. Not many deep throws, but then again, you did have that throw from Tyrod to Hyatt. It was taken away by a penalty. You did have the Slayton catch and also the Slayton drop. So Tyrod's taking some risks, and you know what? Why not? Right? You know, the Giants are 1-5. Where is it going to get you in terms of how bad is it going to be? It can't be much worse than what we're seeing right now. I'd rather play aggressive than scared, especially when you're at the record you're at, and get Jalen Hyatt involved. Isaiah Hodgins and Sterling Shepard and Paris Campbell have been phased out of the offense a little bit more. So Jalen Hyatt, go with the youth movement. Also, I'd like to see Wan'Dale Robinson. He's been good in the quick game. I feel like the Giants should use him a little bit more past the sticks. But he's also a tweener. Xavier McKinney versus Logan Thomas. Would like to see that matchup. I know that, and this is a guy not on the Giants anymore. We'll be seeing him in a few weeks as long as he's healthy. Jabril Peppers, he did pretty well against Logan Thomas in 2020, but that was also 3 years ago. And McKinney's played better. He's played better over the last few games. I can't really credit him. I can't really discredit him. Miami, not great, but Buffalo, I mean, the defense stayed on their toes, and he has yet to give up a touchdown this season. You move further, Bobby Okereke versus Brian Robinson. Okereke has showed up. So is Micah McFadden. Robinson is not necessarily a guy that's going to juke you. He's going to truck you. And the Giants need the strength at the line of scrimmage. They need the strength in the gaps. And that's where Okereke is going to go up against Brian Robinson. You take a look at Kayvon Thibodeau versus Andrew Wiley and Charles Leno. I mean, this offensive line has to have a reason for giving up as many sacks as they have, whether it's Sam Howell or the tackle play or the guard play. Kayvon Thibodeau has to get there. I think this is a game the Giants should get 2 to 3 sacks. Should. Doesn't mean they will. Dexter Lawrence versus Nick Gates. From my understanding, there's a sour opinion of Nick Gates. And Dexter Lawrence, why not try to get your first sack of the season on your former teammate? And it might get feisty. Obviously, these guys know each other, but he plays for a different team now, and he's not going to give 2 shits. Hey, Dexter Lawrence played for my team, so I'm not going to fight him. Nick Gates is a feisty guy. That's who he is. That's how he's going to play. Dexter Lawrence has to be ready for that. Sadiq Charles versus Leonard Williams. Sadiq Charles is an average guard. Came out a couple of years ago out of LSU. Leonard Williams has to show up in pass protection. In the pass rush game. Okay, in the pass rush game, he has to show up, and also against the run too. You move forward to the secondary. Deontay Banks versus Jahan Dotson. They'll place Dotson sometimes in the slot. Also, you got Cordell Flott versus Curtis Samuel. Speed-to-speed matchup. Samuel has been more utilized the last few years with Washington after maybe the first 2 years were questionable. Adoree Jackson versus Terry McLaurin. I think that's obviously always the marquee matchup. And again, these two didn't see each other last year at all. And Darius Slayton versus Kendall Fuller and Benjamin St-Juste. Now, some people have called for Slayton to be traded and those snaps to go to Jalen Hyatt. But, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see about that. I don't think Slayton's going to get traded personally. I know there's some interest from outside teams. But I still think Slayton can be a weapon in this offense, and he's had some good plays against Washington over the years. So, keys to win. Number 1 for me, it's going to be run the football. Saquon Barkley, you have to get a running game going, whether it's Saquon Barkley. If he's not 100%, you go to Gray. If not, you go to Breida. I think Breida is the second in line. You go to him. This Washington defense, if you at least block up decently their front 4, it should be a bit of a breeze getting through that secondary and getting through some of that linebacking core. So that's number 1. Number 2 is get to Sam Howell. I think the Giants need to force some errors by Sam Howell, and that's really part of it because, we talk about how many sacks they've given up, his pocket presence. I think all of that could contribute towards turnovers, whether he fumbles, whether he is forced into a mistake, he throws a pick to somebody like Xavier McKinney, or who knows, he throws a pick to somebody, and that's just, getting the offense on the field faster, and hopefully the offense would score points off of the turnovers that the Giants have committed on defense. So getting to Howell is important because, again, it's going to make him make mistakes. And he's still in his second year, so he's still learning things. And number 3, protect Tyrod. The run will set up the pass this game. Tyrod had about 200 yards last game. In the passing game, if you run the football, the defense is not going to know whether you're going to run or pass after a while, and you got to start filtering in that play action. I know Tyrod's the quarterback, and he threw for like 30, 35 times last week. I mean, you can't really have that, but you like a balanced offense. But you got to protect Tyrod. That's going to be there. So run the football, get to Howell, protect Tyrod. Turnovers are essentially part of number 2. How do I see this game going? I think the Giants are going to lose 17-12. They are wearing their legacy jerseys, which they are undefeated in technically because you have the Bears game, which was a win. You have the tie against the Commanders last year. And this year, they have the Commanders again at home. I think they dropped this game 17-12. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. I just think that the Giants will need another week to kind of rebound, get adjusted to everything. Hopefully next week, the Giants, and I say this all the time, hopefully Giants players next week start getting healthy. Andrew Thomas hopefully making some progress. Daniel Jones maybe getting back to form. JMS, I mean, that's a little weird. And, when he went down with that shoulder injury, I thought he was going to be fine after a few weeks. And, well, looks like he's going to miss his third straight game. So that's not good for the rookie. Missing a lot of rookie development, key snaps against key guys. Let's hand it over to the interview/discussion with Corey Sanchez of On the Warpath.
All right, so now I am with Corey Sanchez of On the Warpath, and let's start with the topic that not many people are talking about, but I want to gauge this because I think it's just an interesting topic. Even though, again, maybe it hasn't had much impact. Corey, what are the vibes and thoughts on new ownership? Obviously, Dan Snyder isn't there anymore, and you guys got I forget his last name, but you guys got the owner from the Josh Harris. You guys got the
Mm-hmm.
Josh Harris group. What are the vibes coming from them? New ownership, different from Dan Snyder. What are your thoughts?
It's quiet right now after the barrage early on, and I think that's a positive because we've talked more this year. I've talked more about things going on off on the field than off the field than I can ever remember. It's about football. It's about strategy. It's about who's running the ball. So I think that is a positive because we haven't had that because it was always something in the back of our mind. I remember last year when we played Chicago on Thursday night, right? There was a report coming out of Dan Snyder, and uh, Amazon had that picture of him looking all slovenly in the box and everything. We don't see that. We don't see that as much anymore. So the vibes are really good. People are excited just to talk about football rather than the proverbial great cloud over our head that was Dan Snyder. And we were released. I mean, when we played Arizona, it was like a family reunion, pretty much. People are coming back. People are buying season tickets again. People said they wouldn't want to buy them again because of Dan Snyder. And, hopefully this ownership group can kind of double down, and we don't know what the future holds with Ron Rivera and everything. So hopefully they make some good football moves that can put us in position to be successful for years to come.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you guys sit at 3-3 right now, which is a more favorable position than the Giants, of course. But you guys have only made the playoffs 1 year out of the few years that Ron Rivera has been coached. So my
Mhm.
next question is, how long do you think the leash is, or do you think that the new ownership team is going to give him at least another year? And of course, once again, you guys sit at 3-3, so that's a very favorable position compared to years past.
Yeah. So the 3-3 best start that we've gotten off to in Ron Rivera's tenure in Washington, and he's been here for 4 years. Anybody tell you that's unacceptable? If you're expecting to make the playoffs or expecting to make some damage, especially in the tough NFC, and especially in our division as well, it's unacceptable. Ron has kind of um, made some bewildering statements over his term in Washington this year. I mean, last year it was we could be eliminated. Um, he kind of he likes to blame the players for a lot of things that goes on. That's his mo. He's defended Jack Del Rio, which he should. That's his coach. But I think at the end of the day, the leash is short on him. I think that nothing short of the playoffs and probably winning a game would get him back next year. But I think he survived one ownership change in Carolina. A lot of people forget that, but I don't know if he'll survive this one if they kind of sleepwalk to the end like we have in recent years. In the playoffs in 2020, we know everybody was hurt. Um, and the Eagles were kind of on the rebuild. Dak was hurt in Dallas, and you guys had a new coach and Judge Joe and whatever. I know it's Joe Judge, but so but y'all still swept us that year. So I mean, yeah, the leash is short for Ron Rivera for sure.
Right, and we'll move to a different coach. That's Eric Bieniemy. How do you think his tenure in Washington has been going so far?
It's been up and down. It's been up and down for sure. I see the grains of the dynamic offense that that he helped build in Kansas City. And anybody with half an eye can tell you that Kansas City looks like they're missing a little bit of Eric Bieniemy over there, whether he was the enforcer for Andy Reid's coaching staff or just as he had input in the game plan. So, I think that is welcome there. He runs a tight ship. Um, the negatives would be that I think that he doesn't use the run to his capabilities. I think on Sunday it's going to be key against the Giants is running the ball, making the game shorter. Sometimes he seems like he passes for the sake of passing, and that sometimes gets him in trouble. They get Sam Howell in trouble, and we've got some of our wide receivers who are still trying to work their way into the system. They finally started targeting Terry McLaurin a lot. I think he had like 11 targets for 8 receptions or something like that. And that's a positive. You got to get John Dotson involved. Curtis Samuel is getting involved, kind of using him like an Isaiah Pacheco type guy. So there has been some positives. His boy from Kansas City, Andrew Wiley, is stealing money right now because he is like a turn door at a daggone mall or something right now. But I see the positives, and it's kind of sad because I think they can build something here, but Ron Rivera kind of in that lame duck year. I don't know how much of that Eric Bieniemy's going to be able to use the fruits of his labor here, unless he like rises up and becomes like the head coaching candidate for Washington.
Right. So we move from the offensive coordinator to the quarterback, and it seems like Sam Howell has been Jekyll and Hyde. And yes, he's a second-year QB at a UNC. One day he'll be turnover free and he'll play some solid football, kind of like against the Eagles. And then he threw 4 picks against Buffalo. What are your thoughts on the way he's played?
I think he's played. I think he's played well. He's only had really 2 bad turnover games. I would say the one, of course, against Buffalo, like everybody knows, and then his first start of the season was against Arizona. I think that's the only games he had multiple turnovers. And other than that, he's played pretty well. Like I said, you mentioned Philadelphia. He had 1 turnover against Chicago, which you would think it would have been a lot more in that game. And then Atlanta, he played free ball. I think he does hold on to the ball a little too long. I think that's caused a little bit of sacks, but I think it's mutually copacetic, right? The fact that you have this really his first year starter, and he has an offensive line that kind of has been neglected over the last couple of years. I mean, we had 2 All Pros on this team about 4 years ago, Trent Williams and Brandon Sheriff, and had one of the better offensive lines, Chase Roulier. That right side was good, Morgan Moses. So I think that he's done well for what he's been dealt with. I wish we could get the weapons, like I said earlier, involved outside Terry McLaurin. Logan Thomas has been a big help for him when he's healthy. You got to get Jahan Dotson involved. And his old Tar Heel teammate, De'Ami Brown, hasn't really done him too many favors because Sam will put that ball out there on a dart, and it's either too far for De'Ami or he just drops it. So those are things that have to get fixed. But I'm impressed by how the young man's played so far this season.
Yeah, definitely. And moving to the running back room, and again, this is from an outsider's perspective, of course. I was looking at the rushing chart.
Mm-hmm.
You got the lead rusher in Brian Robinson. You got the second rusher in Sam Howell, who obviously it's scrambles and all
Mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff. And then you got Antonio Gibson, who I think has only had something like 16, 17 carries this year. Was that expected coming in, or was there just a reason for Antonio Gibson's lack of involvement in the offense?
I don't think that was expected coming in there because it's a contract year for him. And I always say this about Antonio: he's too talented to do some of the stuff he does on the field, and that is putting the ball on the carpet. That has been his bugaboo. He did it against Arizona. He did it against Buffalo this year. So I mean, y'all know having Tiki Barber. I'm not comparing the two, but fumbling can get you in trouble. And I think that's an issue that really has not been addressed with him. I wish he could do more out in space, which he's shown that he can be a weapon outside in space, because really he at Memphis, he was more of a receiver than he was a running back. And they've tried to turn him into an NFL running back, which I don't think that's really his forte. He kind of took the league by surprise in 2020 a little bit in some of the yardage that he got. But other than that, he's been a base type guy. And I said Isaiah Pacheco, right? He kind of is that type where he could be a receiver. He could be a running back. He's got the size of running back, but I think he's got more skills as a receiver than anything.
Yeah, and you were talking about this guy earlier,
Mm-hmm.
getting him more involved in the offense. That's Jahan Dotson. He really impressed me when you guys played us twice last year, and I believe he was a first round pick. And it seems like some of the flashes that we saw last year, he hasn't showed this year. Is that just him as a player? Is that him not being involved in the offense too much yet? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a combination of both, right? I think that the offense has given him opportunities. He had one target last week where he tried to get a one-handed grab and he dropped it. They never went back to him. I think the communication between him and Sam looks like it's a little bit of a problem at times, and they need to get that situated, because people are going to start keying off on Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. And the expectation was coming into this season that either if you can't beat Terry, Jahan's there, or if you lock down Jahan and Terry, you got Curtis Samuel there. So I think that it's a combination of him and Sam. I think they just got to work on a couple of things, and then it's a new offense too, with Eric Bieniemy, and hopefully he can get it started again. Remember last time we were up in the Meadowlands, and he kind of got right against the Giants, and really was the reason why we tied that game up when we had that big touchdown pass from him from Taylor Heineke to him. So hopefully we can see some flashes here as we get ready more in that second quarter-ish type part of the season.
Right. So we move to the unit up front. That's the offensive line now.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically, they have more sacks allowed than the Giants, but I damn well know that the Giants' offensive line is worse with the injuries that they've been having and all that sort of stuff. What is your assessment on the offensive line? I know maybe a couple games earlier in the year, Sam Howell took a few sacks that he really didn't need to. What are your thoughts on their overall plan? I know you already mentioned that Andrew Wiley is stealing money.
You see this box?
Yes.
Garbage. Yeah, it's garbage in there. The offensive line has played piss poor, to say the least. The sack totals, it's a combination of them and Sam, but you got guys, Nick Gates. I mean, you guys know what Nick Gates is. He's not going to be he's not a full-time starter in this league. He's a good role player on the offensive line if you need some spot duty. I think he came in last year for you all. I like him. I think he's a tough guy. I mean, I was there when he broke his leg back in 2021 and to come back and play well, but sometimes he's out of sorts. I think our guards are okay. You got Sam Cosmi, who used to be the right tackle. They moved him inside for Andrew Wiley, who's probably been the missing link. Charles Leno, who was out last week due to some personal issues, it was replaced by Cornelius Lucas, and he's been in Washington for 4 years as a major. He played left tackle in 2020, and then he was also the right tackle for a little bit. So he's played some spot duty there. Had a perfect game according to Pro Football Focus. He had no pressures, no missed blocks or anything like that last week against Atlanta. So, I mean, that kind of warrants, do you give this cat an opportunity to go out there? But the offensive line has played, I can't really say below its potential, because you've got some guys on there who it's an island of misfit toys right now. And Yeah, they're like a D minus for me right now this year.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually happened to, I mean, as you said, Nick Case is a tough guy. I
Mm-hmm.
actually happened to meet him last year, so he was nice and everything like
Mm-hmm.
that. But yeah. So moving forward to the other side of the trenches, we'll talk about one particular player,
Uh-oh.
Chase Young. He's got 3 sacks on the season. He had his option decline prior to this year. What are your thoughts on how he's played this far? And I know we're only 6 games in, but do you see him getting a possible prove it deal if he plays well on the year?
I don't know about the proof that I thought he's played good. Now he's missed getting home on a lot of sacks this year. Opportunity. I mean, he had a couple against Desmond Ritter where he just blew right past the tackle and the quarterback. So there's still some refining of his game that needs to go on. I don't think he's this generational talent that we were touting at the end of 2019 and going into 2020. But I think he can be a very good player in this league. He's a Pro Bowl type player. I To prove it deal, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of possible animosity there because Ron has called him out a lot. Jack Del Rio hasn't called him out as much, but um, yeah, I think he could get a possible prove it deal, or he could say, kick rocks, I'm going somewhere else. And then we've seen in Washington before. Oh, you guys remember this? We had a guy called what was his name? Antonio Pierce, right? Up there who came up to Big Blue, and we saw him flash in his last year in Washington, and then he went and took it home with the Giants. So, I think he's probably still snitching on Herm Edwards, but that's a different story for a different day, right? Yeah. So I mean, Chase is Chase. So, I think he's doing. I know he's doing better than he has, and he's healthy finally. So that's a good thing. So I don't know about the prove it deal though. I think there's a long way to go for that.
Right. Just a general question
Mm-hmm.
before we get to one of the bigger stories is how has the linebacking core played? I know you guys haven't been statistically a good defense or statistically a good run defense, and that's where linebacking really comes into play.
Yeah, I have to be nice on this one. They're kind of like the offensive line. I think Jamin Davis has had spots. He's had 2 key turnovers in 2 of the 3 wins. He had a forced fumble of Russell Wilson back in week 2, and then last week at Atlanta, he had the game-sealing interception with them driving. But he has struggled. He struggled in coverage. They put him on DeAndre Swift against Philadelphia. He got flagged for a illegal contact call, which I think it was a third down, and so that was automatic first down in those games. So he struggled. Cody Barton, who is new to Washington, he's on a 1-year prove it deal coming over from Seattle, where he has spent all his career, and he struggled. And he's the Mike linebacker, so he's getting ready. He's coming into a new system, trying to prove it, trying to make some money, and trying to direct guys who've been in this system for 3-4 years now. And his play, I mean, there was one play, Alex, that I saw against Philadelphia, and he literally, the ball was on the ground and just whiffed on it, missed it, and Philadelphia was able to recover it, and they wound up with a field goal. But that could have been points that you took away from them, and maybe where your offense was going, possibility to win that game. So, but no crying over spilled milk. Linebacking core, they're about D minus, D plus, just like the offensive line.
Right, definitely. So, moving over to the secondary, you guys drafted Emmanuel Forbes in the first, and many thought that he was a reach, but he actually had an impressive preseason. He was benched. Kendall Fuller, if you look at his Pro Football Reference coverage statistics, it hasn't been great, or it hasn't been up to really his level because we know to the fullest potential who Kendall Fuller could be. Who do you think the starting 3 corners other than Kendall Fuller will be on Sunday, and how do you think the secondary has played overall?
I think the secondary has played. They've been not break, and then they've broken a couple of times. To your question of the starters, maybe they may ease Manny Forbes back into it, but right now I think it's going to be Kendall, of course. Benjamin St. Juice, who got his first career interception last week also, and it will be probably Danny Johnson, who was in the slot last week. And the question really becomes, who are you keeping on the outside? Because they tried to put Manny Forbes on that outside, and we saw A.J. Brown baptize him. So maybe he needs to be more on the inside. Benjamin St. Juice, who, I mean, went toe to toe with Drake London, but kind of held him down. Also held down Justin Jefferson last year for the most part, outside of one big play in the first quarter. So he has the ability to go against big time players. And then Kendall Fuller, who is one of the more streakier corners in the NFL. Like, he'll have a streak of really good games. Like, I'm getting worried now because we're getting into this 6th, 7th game of the year, and he's still playing well. So I'm like, but to the secondary, man, I think they've played all right. They've played some big games against some big receivers, and my biggest thing is really with Jack Del Rio, and when they treat wide receivers like Stephon Diggs, right? You treat AJ Brown like regular old dudes. You don't show them the respect that they deserve, and you get burned for that. And that's one of the things that's kind of negative towards the secondary and defense as a whole, is that we don't give the respect to these guys. We just think regular old things are going to work. And not to change subject, but that's what I like about that assassin, Wink Martindale. He is going to be aggressive, not going to be passive. So that's one of the things I wish kind of that secondary was at times.
Yeah, definitely. So moving forward to further game prep into the fan/evaluation standpoint, whether it's position by position or say position against position or player against player, any matchups you're looking forward to see on Sunday?
And you're going to call me crazy for this, but I really want to see this offensive line against the y'all's defensive line, because Kayvon Thibodeau ate last year against us. And I want to see how we handle that this year. Can we lock him down? Leonard Williams also on y'all's line. I want to see how this offensive line can respond, and can they keep Sam clean? That I think that's going to be key to Sunday's matchup, is keeping Sam clean, because it always seems like if the Giants get pressure against Washington, the turnovers come. I mean, you could have the Brady Bunch being y'all's offensive line, and they're still going to be they're still going to be dominant for some reason. So that's kind of the common concern, I guess you would say.
Going into X factors, two X factors, one on offense, one on defense for Washington.
Offense, X factor. If he gets involved, I think Jahan Dotson can wake up and he could be an X factor for this team. On defense, I think it's Cam Curl. He didn't get a lot of press about what he did last week, but he had some hits that jarred the ball free against Atlanta. So I would go with Cam Curl, the safety, who's also in a contract year also. So those are my two X factors: Jahan Dotson, Cam Curl, on both sides of the ball.
And then game planning, looking at the Giants side, who's one player from the Giants you're watching, who's on offense, and who's one player from the Giants on defense that you're watching?
Well, I'll tell you, the defense, I start there. Kayvon Thibodeau, like I said, he wrecked that Sunday night game. I was there in person, and I froze just to see him go free on Charles Leno. Let's see if they learn to maybe get a tight end over there to chip him. And because I'm honest, if he gets loose, Sam Howell could have some problems. I think he's got a bit better clock in his head than Heineke, but it's Thibodeau on that side. And then the two-headed monster that y'all have against us, at least, I think I even have the numbers here. Do y'all know if Daniel Jones is still playing or not? I know it's
he's listed as questionable. I personally think Brian Dable loves the gamesmanship.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he's playing. He said on
Gotcha.
Tuesday on Kay and Adams that, or I'm sorry, it was Up and Adams that he's still feeling pain in the left side of his neck. And I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
can we leave him to next week? And Tyrod's a good game
Yeah, he
manager. I
is.
mean, that's what you signed him for. But I think it would be a very, very big mistake if they decided to let Daniel Jones play this week.
I mean, it's Washington, so he does eat against us. So, um, with that being said, I think it's Saquon, man. I mean, he's touched the ball 146 times against us for 906 yards and 5 touchdowns. If that doesn't tell you what we need to watch out for on the defensive side of the ball and how they use him, um, I think we'd be sadly mistaken. You can't treat him like a regular old dude. And I mean, I haven't heard much out of Darren Waller, but I know he's celebrating the championship. Shout out to the Aces because his wife won. So I guess, maybe just the way things are going, he might get a ring too from him.
Definitely. And then let's go with who wins this game and maybe a final score too.
Oh Lord, you did this to me last year, Alex. And how did that go? We tied. Golly Moses. The Giants concern me every time. Every time we play Giants, you can throw the records out of the back door, and it always seems like y'all play a different level of game against us. I think Tyrod Taylor's better than what people give him credit for. So with that being said, I do think we wind up winning this game. I think it'll be let's go 23. Yeah, let's go 23-20 final score.
I say personally Washington wins 17-12. That was at least my prediction. So a little bit similar.
Y'all shut out the Bills for 3 quarters. I mean, who am I to be like throwing up 23 points there? But it is what it is.
It's definitely week to week league. But last thing but not least, as usual, where can people find you and what you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on the X and all social media platforms at Sanchez405 on here, and then of course on YouTube at On the Warpath. Do the live streams. I have my Monday After Pill. That's just a breakdown of what happened on Monday and on Sunday, and then Warpath Wednesdays we preview the opponent. It's really one of the first previews of the week going into Sunday. So yeah, and a lot of shorts out there too. So make sure you go and like those up and do the live streams on Sunday as always. But I appreciate this. It's fun as always. So good to do there. And hopefully we don't end in a tie this year. So I appreciate it.
I was unfortunately I was at the tie game last year.
Mm-hmm.
That was an interesting experience. But if you guys haven't already, please check out Corey's stuff, his Twitter, his YouTube work, and all that sort of good stuff. But as for this show, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff, turn on post notifications, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, share out, do all the good stuff. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time. Peace out.